What's going on, guys? It's Jay from Dirty Boy Tools, here to bring you a toolkit you could use to help build Gundam models, Zoid models, and I believe a lot of these tools are applicable to building car models as well, but I've never built a car model myself, so don't take my word for that. The main thing you're going to need in building these types of models is a pair of nippers. If you have a good pair of nippers, that is all you really need. That is your minimum requirement. If you have these, you're set. Everything else might be a little bit of a struggle, but it can be done. Now, in the case that you don't have a good pair of nippers, by the way, this is my pair of Eigen nippers. If you don't have a good pair of nippers, or even a bad pair will be acceptable, an X-Acto knife can work. You can actually use this to cut the parts out. I just don't recommend this. You're cutting out hundreds of parts, tiny little parts. You're going to be hunched over a table. You're going to be working on this for possibly hours at a time, and this is going to get really annoying and it's going to fatigue you. You should carry an X-Acto knife as a backup to help you trim some of the parts, get some of the plastic off so that it has a cleaner finished look at the end. But again, that's not fully necessary if you have a pair of good flush cutters. Next thing I would recommend in there would be a pair of tweezers. I have two pairs of tweezers in here. I got my long pair and I got my short pair. If I had to choose between using these, I'm going to choose my short pair. A little bit more control, and this one has an angled head and it doesn't have a sharp tip. It is pointed, but not as sharp as this tip. This tip will poke into somebody. These tips are good for fine electronics, but a lot of times I'll use my tweezers to help peel off the stickers and carry them over. This very thin point isn't a lot of surface area for the sticker to stick onto. It is useful, but if you had to make a preference, I would say something that's a little more dull. Next thing I have in here, so this is an electrician's tool. I will link this in the description. It's basically like an awl tool, like a needle, but it's not pointed. And what this will help you do is when you take the stickers and place it onto the model, you need to flatten it out. And sometimes the stickers are in little crevices of the model. This will help you get in there and flatten it out so that it actually stays on the model and doesn't come off. It can be a very useful tool, and it'll save you the trouble of trying to get your finger in there and poke around, or get something sharp in there and poke around and risk cutting or damaging a part. Next thing I have in here is very similar to tweezers and could be a good alternative. I have this pair of miniature pliers, the PS01s from the company called Engineers from Japan. Very good tools, very good quality. They are spring-loaded pliers. I don't particularly like spring and pliers, but for the case of model building, having a spring is very useful because of all the repetition you'll have to do. It also has a pair of cutters on it, but chances are you're not going to use these cutters when building a model. Also have some extra blades for the X-Acto knife. Here I have some jeweler's files. So just basically open up the back of it, take a file out, put the back on so the files don't fall out, and then insert it into the chuck, tighten the chuck up. Now you have a file sitting in there and you can file the parts down. Why would you want to do this? Well, sometimes the flush cut isn't perfectly flush and you'll have excess pieces on there, so you might want to grind them off. I don't think that's necessary, but there are people that are perfectionists out there, so having something like this will definitely help achieve perfection. Last thing I have in here is another blade similar to the X-Acto knife. This is a Coast DX126, and the reason I recommend this blade as well as the X-Acto knife is so that you can actually shave down excess plastic on parts. this actually might work better than filing them down. You can cut off some of the excess plastic. Just be careful doing that because all the parts are plastic, so you could cut into them. But very useful for that. You can put your finger on the back end of it, get a little support, and do some fine work with that. So there you have it. These are all the tools that I would use in my toolkit to make a Gundam or a Zoid. I believe a lot of these tools would be transferable to making model car kits. You can also, of course, include things like these little sandpaper files, smooth files. They're a little softer than this, so they can help you out. You can also include things like magnifying glasses as well if you need to. Reading those parts and reading the manuals can get tedious and it can be tough on the eyes. So having things like that around may help you as well. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you think my kit is incomplete, what would you add to it? What would you do differently?